I used to push back on, no, I don't want to be the person out front. And then I had to kind of reconcile, well, God made me this way, like I got this ability, I probably should use it to my advantage and to, for greater good. I feel like what I'm built to do is sit in that grey. What I've learned how to do is sit with people who I disagree with, work with them, be at the table. It's no surprise that in sport, diversity and inclusion, fan engagement, that all sits in the comms side of the business. Now that tells you everything about where the intent is from that organisation, that it is a commercial conversation, it is about reputation and brand. And again, that's not a bad thing, we just have to be aware of that.
All right, welcome back to the Adam Interest podcast. We just finished up one up and then we have another one back to back. That happens a lot, but you guys don't know. It's quite tiring sometimes. I do have a Red Bull hidden at the back, so to get the energy pumping as we go. But hey,
we're warmed up now, okay? We're warmed up for this one.
Yeah, okay, it is warm weather, so naturally we're warmed up, Maza. But Maza, it's always good to see a hijabi sister in front of us, isn't it? It's a very rare sight.
It's rare.
We always complain.
Our sisters in front of a camera, behind a microphone, most of them are petrified.
Yeah.
So to have a few who are comfortable enough to have a chat on a mic.
The good thing is she has a lot of experience in front of the
She
camera.
does it for a living, which is great.
She does it for a living. So she might actually outshine us, Maza.
Seasoned campaigner.
Seasoned campaigner. Rana, welcome to the Adam Interest podcast. How are you?
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. I'm really good. Yeah, I'm surprised that there's not many women that are...
But it's not for a lack of trying, sister. We
Really?
try so often. Yeah. Wade, the producer, he knows this. Amount of doors we've knocked. Sister, come on the podcast. You do some amazing stuff. We want to showcase that. We want to talk about that. Sorry, brother. I'm not comfortable with the camera.
Yeah, wow.
I don't like this. I don't like that.
It's because they're really good people and I'm just a show pony.
No.
It's funny you say that. I sort of forget that and forget what a rarity it is. I just assume everyone's kind of working it out, and we are seeing more and more Muslim women be more visible, but forget about being Muslim. People are always like, oh my God, how do you do that? And I forget that it's actually not everybody's thing.
It's the public speaking, it's the in front of camera, that little sort of nervousness, anxiety that kicks in.
Yeah.
Scares a lot of people.
Well, it's when I went to school, I had this diabolical principal who I was a school captain, and she said, when I was in year 12, she said, right, every assembly, you're never going to know when it's going to happen, but I'm going to tell you 5 minutes before you're going on that you're going to speak, and I'll give you the topic, but you can't prepare.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this because I want you to learn how to just get up and speak.
Impromptu.
And I hated her for it at the time. Imagine getting up in front of your whole school unprepared to speak eloquently. But boy, did it prepare me for life. Like, it was just the best lesson I could have asked for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was one of those people I couldn't speak in front of people, in front of a camera. Maza would know that. Like, when I was younger, I used to
Really?
I would rather die than speak in front of people.
Could not get a word out of
No,
it.
not happening.
Look at you now.
Now I enjoy going in front of people, putting on a show and just running muck. It's a bit of fun.
But it is an acquired taste. You know, a lot of people. There are so many people out there who have some great messages and so many accomplishments to share and deliver. But they're the ones who don't seem to get in front of the microphone. And then on the other side, you get people who are like, you know what, I'd rather you not be in front of a microphone and hey, you know what, everyone's there. We want to hear what you got to say. So
I know.
it can be a bit annoying sometimes.
I think it helps when you have a message too. Like, I think it helps when you care about what you're talking about or a purpose. I mean, for any job really, knowing why you're doing it is kind of the key. But yeah, it's certainly, I often ask myself, like, I'll say to myself, like, I used to push back on, no, I don't want to be the person out front. No, probably like a lot of the sisters say to you, because there is something weird about saying, no, put me on the cover and put me up front. And then I had to kind of reconcile, well, God made me this way. Like, I've got this ability. I probably should use it to my advantage and to, for greater good. So here we are.
I've told many sisters, I said, look, if you don't get up and do it, somebody else will. There's always a void, there's always a gap.
Yeah.
And it's there for the filling, it's there for the taking. So if somebody of our representation with our message isn't there to fill that gap, believe me, that gap will be filled. Like TV stations, radio stations, podcast studios, they need guest slots. They need guests to fill the slots. So there will be. They'll put out a request more broadly and say, well, who can speak on this particular topic? And you'll get all sorts who turn up. And if we don't get the representation, then it's our loss.
And also, like, I think people don't really, God, we've really jumped into it. I don't think people, I think, gosh, you know, like I grew up in the wake of 9/11 and there was a big push for visibility for Muslims, and obviously being a hijabi women become the most visible. But I thought we were kind of over that and that was a novelty and we don't need that anymore. But I'm still gobsmacked by the amount of people who come up to me and say, oh, wow, like that's amazing. I've never seen someone like you do what you're doing. And I think, okay, yeah, we've got to keep going.
Yeah.
Like I think we don't need my voice anymore, do we? And then, yeah, it's just like constantly reminded, like, yeah, no, it's still very rare.
It's because when you look at your resume, you are quite involved in a very white male dominated industry.
You are.
As a Muslim hijabi,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, I know.
How did you stick yourself in there? Like, what the hell happened? Did you know anyone in the higher up that they put, like, what happened? How did that door
You
open?
sound like my dad. He's like, what on earth? Like, this is not what we envisaged for you. No, it's like I started out very grassroots community in my career. I was a social worker. I worked at an Islamic school as a counsellor, and I loved working with young Muslims to support them. I also happened to love sport and grew up watching sport. Being Indian, cricket was kind of running through my veins, but I also loved AFL. And I found, and, you know, growing up in the era that I did, like I said, post 9/11, I was a teenager when that happened. I think that really fundamentally changed me in a way I've only really, as an adult, understood that. I think I grew up walking through the world thinking, okay, I have to put my best foot forward. I have to really show what it means to be a full human being and a Muslim, because there was just such a narrow view of that being portrayed in the media. But also I think in our own communities, we just didn't give ourselves the chance to consider ourselves as full contributors in society in spaces where we wouldn't normally see ourselves. And I would go to the footy and love it, and it was kind of one of the only places where a lot of that baggage didn't exist. And I loved that. I loved that being a space where it felt like a reasonably halal, you know, activity for me as well as a young person. You could go to the footy and you could do what you needed to do, you know, barrack for your team, and everything else just didn't matter, and I loved that. So I found a space to belong through sport, but that was a kind of a limited belonging. And while I was working at the primary school, I saw these Muslim kids also love sport, and when I talked about sport, they actually lent in. Like when I asked them to kind of consider their feelings and emotion and leadership, they couldn't care less. But if I talked to them about, you know, Basha or you know, whoever was the premiership winning captain at the time, well, they probably all went for Carlton anyway, you know, they lent in, and I thought, okay, there's something in this. And then cut to, I just had my daughter, and AFL fans will know there was a season where an Indigenous player, superstar of the game, Adam Goodes, started to get booed, basically for being an Indigenous person who was really representing his culture. And it was a really terrible time in football, and I saw something really familiar to me. I saw a racism that I had felt myself and wasn't okay with in a space that was actually a really happy space for me. And something happened. Like it just lit a fire under me, and I thought, nah, I've just had a child. I'm not letting this continue. And I was looking at this industry like, there's not many of us in there, whether it's Muslim people, whether it's Indigenous. There's not many people who aren't kind of white male, the traditional types, organising this game and curating this game in this industry. And I just knew from experience that if there were more of us in there, things would change. We would have the conversations that needed to be had. We would shed light on what it's like to feel like you're on the outer and shift culture. So at the time I had been volunteering as a multicultural ambassador, and there was a gentleman, a superstar by the name of Ali Fahua, who was working in the AFL, and I said to him, who was the one person I knew, I'm quitting my job. I didn't have a job. I just had so much faith that I would make this happen. I said, I'm quitting my job. If there's any job in the AFL, I'll take it. I don't care what it is. I just need to get in there and then I'll work the rest out. And he was like, well, actually Richmond are looking for a fan engagement and marketing officer, which I knew nothing about, but I was like, yep, I can do that. I've got that covered. And that was my first job in sport.
Are you a Richmond fan?
I was not a Richmond fan. I'm a Melbourne supporter.
That's so random.
So random. Again, I think there was
That's
a little...
a very white, old male-dominated team.
Jewish, like, I honestly, I think there was a little bit of rebellion in that. Like, back in the day as a teenager, just like, no, I'm going to be that person that says, you know, like, breaks the stereotypes. And I think that's probably been a feature of everything I've ever done. There's some kind of driving force in me that pushes against type. So yeah, I've kept Melbourne, but once I started working at Richmond, and I worked there through their premiership when they won all their trophies. I've got a soft spot for them, so I haven't left them behind.
Yeah, fair
I'm
enough.
surprised you didn't support them.
Oh, well, when you work there, you kind of do, but I can't let go of my team. That's
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
all right,
sacrilege.
You know, on one side, let's say the political or public, if we call it rhetoric around Australia, is that, we're a multicultural society, inclusive, we want to give opportunities to all, equal opportunity, all that kind of stuff. That, to most people, or to many people, seems to be a bit of just marketing veneer. Behind it is an inherently racist society. What, number one, you seem to be agreeing with that. How bad is it? And you're working within the system. You're clearly, visibly, loud and proud about your identity and what you stand for. Are we genuinely taking steps towards improving that and addressing that core issue at its root, or are we still sort of glazing over it and saying, look, you know what, a token apology over here, a token gesture over there, but we're still not addressing the issue at its roots?
I mean, I guess compared to what, so the main spaces that I work in are media and sport, and I do work with corporates and not-for-profits as a consultant, but they're probably the two really big industries that I try to wade into. Is it getting better? I mean, I talk to friends of mine in America who do similar work, and they look at us and think we're really backwards. And the racism that, as you say, is kind of baked into the way we exist is really confronting to them, because over there you see it on the tape, like it's out on the table. They might be shouting at each other and not really getting anywhere either, but it's named, it's present, and it's kind of the thing. It's not the elephant in the room. Whereas here there is this sense that we haven't even gotten to the conversation yet, and there is that idea that it's kind of in the air that we breathe, and we can't really ever point to it. It's so fundamental to how we are shaped as a society. And you think about colonization and the way we were shaped as a country. All of that has bled into who we are and how we do things. So I'm not sure that I guess it's just in what way and compared to what are we doing okay or not. What I will say is, like, the times feel more tense and more divided than ever. And there's a part of me that thinks that may be a good thing, or there's a silver lining in that, in that I feel like conversations are becoming more robust, more truthful. I feel like there's less of that kind of tokenistic effort, or people are very quick to call that kind of stuff out. And I think recent conflicts globally have really kind of ripped the Band-Aid off that. Now we're in the middle, it's like we're in the middle of a renovation, like everything's everywhere and it's a complete mess, and that's certainly how it feels in the work I do. But the one thing I will say is that I see people just being way more honest and saying, well, that's not good enough, or yeah, this is racist. And I think I was at a forum recently, a sports forum at the Australian Open, talking about anti-racism, and the point was made that we have to get to the point where being called a racist is not as bad as being a racist. Like in this country, when you accuse someone of racism or point something out as being racist, you know, everybody just self-combusts, and it's like, well, we can't even take the next step if we can't actually just have the conversation. So I think in a weird way we're taking steps towards something more honest. Where that then leads us, I don't know.
I don't know. Like, throughout my life, I haven't seen anything get better. In the Australia will always be racist the way it's going. You look at it recently, just today, with the whole SEN issue that we spoke about before the pod. Like, no one could say anything that's against an agenda, right? So, like Peter Lalor lost his job because he said, you know, look after the Palestinians, stop this. And he lost his job. Veteran. He's a veteran, and he's a white male as well. So they even turn on their kind if you support anything against their own ideology, right? So, like, that's a big statement. SCN's massive. And they showed where they stand with their thoughts, their mentality. And it just shows, like, that they're not going to accept any sort of diversity or diversity thoughts, right? And you being a Muslim, right, and during, you know, what's been going on in the Middle East, I doubt you were able to speak up. I don't know, but I would assume people probably even told you behind the scene, hey, shut up, don't say anything, right? You might lose your job, you might lose friends. Yeah. Like, it's such a crazy world we live in. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, during everything that was going on, did you come across any sort of thing where they told you to just be quiet, you get yourself in trouble, or don't speak up?
Yeah, look, I mean, the silencing is very real, and it's not anything direct. I've not experienced anything direct, but it's through other people's cases, like even Pete Lalor's firing or standing down, you know, that in itself acts as a silencing mechanism, which is the point,
it's a
right?
message. It send you a message.
Exactly. So, and again, which, you know, the thing that got me into sport in the first place was Adam Goodes, but not just the booing, the way the media treated him when he tried to speak up for himself. And that was also similarly very silencing to other people in communities like his, to say, well, when you put your head up and try and be a representative of your people, you're going to get shut down. Similarly with Yasmin Abdul-Majid. So it's that repeated messaging. I think in this case, given the current context, what's fascinating to me, that's a failure of leadership at SEN. So if you contrast that with Usman Khawaja, star Australian cricket player who wanted to speak up about Palestine and his and the human rights aspect of the entire situation, Cricket Australia weren't comfortable with him naming Palestine or having Palestinian colours on what he wanted to write on his shoes and make that gesture, but they sat down with him. They worked with him on what they felt like was a, I guess, middle road take or message. Now, we can all feel uncomfortable about that, but to be fair to Cricket Australia, at least there was a conversation. There was not a shutting down of his voice. There was an embracing of his place on the team. And yes, you have a right to speak up about issues you care about. Let's just work together on what that might look like. Now, I would love it if they didn't do that and they just let him say what he had to say. But we all know the realities of the world, and when there are brands and money attached to things, what happens in those situations. In this case, there was no conversation. There was just what I have to assume is a very powerful lobby asking for this person, for Pete, to not be part of the broadcast. And then what do you do? And I think we as a community probably have to get smarter about that there are certain things that talk, unfortunately, and carry weight, and maybe we play that game.
Yeah, for context, in 2024, we had a partnership with SEN. And we've done a lot of advertising through them, through the cricket and whatnot. And a few weeks ago, the contract ended. and we wanted to renew it. They wanted to renew it, and I didn't renew it last week sometime. I sent the rejection email, and a couple of days later, this happened, right? And then the funny thing is, like, when this happened early in the morning, my phone was buzzing about the customers, the community saying, where does Hijaz stand in this? All right, are you guys still partners with them? Like, cut the partnership, speak up. So we actually put a statement around 1.5 hours ago saying the contract ended a few weeks ago. We didn't renew it, and we are proud of not renewing it, right? So the Muslim community acted quite quickly. Like, it hurt a lot of people, and it's trending like crazy, and it's going to have a massive impact, I reckon. Obviously, when you look at obviously they broadcast the cricket, and so many Muslims tune in on SEN. So would that impact SEN? Probably. I reckon you'll have the Muslims start boycotting that, so it's going to create a lot of drama there. It's just unnecessary by SEN, quite immature.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just is. It was so knee-jerk, but we're seeing it as well with the ABC, who are going through the courts with Antoinette Lattouf in a similar way. I do wonder, though, like, just say you were still on the books with SEN, what conversations could have been had given you were a commercial partner. There's leverage in that. And I often ask myself this question, like, where's the line of working with a client or working with someone? As Muslims, we have that higher purpose, and we try and cultivate access for these moments. And I often, I was really interested to know, I mean, obviously you're not partners anymore, but I was really keen to hear, like, would there have been a conversation for Hijaz and SEN?
Like, I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, Tom Brady came to Australia, right? And we were part of that. And Tom Brady said some dumb things, back in Israel and whatnot. And we actually pulled out from the whole tour. Like, we made a financial loss on it, right? So, again, if we actually signed the contract with SEN, renewed it for 2025, and then a few days later this happened, I could guarantee you would have pulled out from it, right? Yeah. And I don't think they would have come to us and be like, hey, this is what he said, what are your opinions? I don't think they would have cared, right? No. And
but there are so many other commercial partners, other commercial interests, lobbies and whatnot, who are probably paying them a lot more than what we're paying them, or whatever it is. The scope, size and scale of what some of these relationships are is enormous. But to add to this point, right, and it's walking on thin ice here, but there is the other side of this. So your point, I'm keen to explore that further and say, okay, well, if we stay on board and there's always that argument about, okay, well, if you're at the dealing table, if you're at the discussion table, you can at least influence change. Yeah. Sometimes our own community don't understand that, right? So the first calls and messages that would have come through this morning would have been from our own stakeholders, our own community, who said, you should not do this, or we want to see Hijaz walk away from this, or whatever it is. And if you stay on board, then we're going to act against you accordingly. So there's always that thing as well to say, okay, well, there's not only a commercial reality, but there's a brand connection that we have to our specific target audience, who we can stand to lose them. Same thing could have been said about, for example, Tom Brady. Okay, let's say if we play the long game, stay on board with the partnership, maybe have a chat with Tom and say, look, you know what, he's on microphone. How about you go and say something differently? Maybe you made those statements years ago. Maybe you can correct them now that you're a bit older, a bit wiser for whatever it is. But would our community give us the leeway and the understanding and the backing to say, look, you know what, we're going to play the long game with this. Maybe there is some potential for evolution and change and improvement over time.
It's so tough. Like, and I feel like I've been on all sides of this conversation, and probably there was a period of time where I would have absolutely been like, no, you don't ever work with people when it crosses your, and I just think, we need all types, right? And everybody has to play a role. I mean, you said it before, like, I sit at the nexus of like white male culture in this country, really. And they're often the people that I work with, not to mention other minority groups that, whose values fly in the face of our faith. I often find myself in those spaces too, working with LGBTQI communities where there is kind of overlap. So but I often, and I have this argument even within my own family, you know, I have a very headstrong elder sister who just cannot fathom doing the work that I do. And I really respect her clarity of morality and like her clarity of purpose. That means she actually can't withstand any, you know, grey, any areas of grey. I feel like what I'm built to do is sit in that grey. What I've learned how to do is sit with people who I disagree with, work with them, you know, be at the table. But it can come with such compromise, and it can come with such hurt. And when I see, you know, whether it's Hijaz doing something or another Muslim organisation inviting a prime minister or working with government, and that blowback comes from community, I can see both sides there, and the pain from community is so real because what they're saying is like, you're our only representations out there in really visible ways, and when you don't fully represent us in the way we want to, like that's so alienating. You want your leaders, in inverted commas, to look and sound like you, but at the same time, like, nothing gets done if someone's not at the table. We don't all have to be there.
Yeah.
But I think as a community, we have to support those who are sitting at the table trying to get things done. And then we have to support those standing on the outside, you know, throwing rocks as well, not literal rocks, but, you know, trying to shift it from the grassroots.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the thing is, we're starting to find that even within the Muslim community, you get these almost two camps. You get the people who are very conservative, traditional, like you mentioned, your older sister, who I've met and dealt with before, and I know exactly what you mean about the fact that she's very, very adamant on her principles, her way, and I've lived like this, I will always live like this, and I'm not going to look left or right. And could not really give a bar about, okay, but because some people take that religious philosophical view that ultimately in the court of Allah I'm accountable for my own actions, okay, and I need to be responsible for those. But then there are others who say, look, you know what, I want to take maybe a slightly more progressive view to say, okay, well, I need to try to forge a better world that my kids could grow up in. You know, you mentioned you're a mother, and that's a big reality that sinks into all of us who are parents to say, okay, well, one is the world that I grew up in, which had certain challenges, but how can I ensure that or try to mitigate those challenges for my kids moving forward? And someone somewhere has to do those things. I'm sure, for example, Walid Ali cops his fair share of flack as well on the project. There's a lot of forums and guests and whatnot that our community would really not exactly, look at too favourably.
But really lonely,
you have to be gutsy and turn up there. Because if you ask most Aussie, regular Australians, name a Muslim, Bashar Hooli, Walid Ali, that's really about it.
Yeah.
That's the only
Sunny Bill.
representation. That's really the representation that we do have.
Yeah.
You get Fatima Payman now coming up, sort of, visible hijabi, which is great to see.
Yeah.
Again, really gutsy on her part. Not an easy gig to have, crossing the floor in Parliament, doing all that kind of stuff. It's really gutsy.
Yeah, I was at, Alhamdulillah, I got to go to Turkey in last year in 2024 and attend a prophetic leadership summit where there was scholars from around the world. And really the crux of the summit was, what does prophetic leadership teach us about how we should go about what it is we need to achieve as an ummah? And there was a lot of conversation about for Muslim, by Muslim, grassroots rejection of the system that exists. And I really felt troubled by that because while that's one way to do it, I think for me the answer is we've got to have that way, and we've got to create our own, much like Hijaz has done, create our own system. But also you've got to still work with the systems that exist, and we still need people, and we need things that are built for Muslim by Muslim for everyone.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of where I try and position myself, that everything I do is infused with my understanding of Islam and my higher purpose to worship Allah, but actually the benefits are for everybody and the lessons are for everybody. And I feel like the thing that I always hope for with our community is, okay, you don't have to disagree. Like, disagreement's not a problem. That's happened since the dawn of time, since our Prophet ﷺ led our ummah. There were always disagreements, but let's not block each other. Let's not focus our energy on tearing each other down. And I think that's where I get a bit frustrated sometimes, where there are people who are prominent who probably get a lot more flack than maybe they deserve. I don't know. I'll probably get cancelled for saying that.
Have you had flack from the community for what you do?
Oh, look, I don't think I fly under the radar, and it's weird. And I learnt this last year going to that summit, just how much I actually don't work with the Muslim community. So much of my work is actually outside of our Muslim community. And so because of that, and then it's sport and media, and it's just like, I think half the time people don't know what I'm doing. So it's kind of, I fly very under the radar, but I will get the DMs that say, you know, do you really think you should be working with that group, or can you be more vocal? But I'm very lucky so far that I don't get too much. I'm sure there are people who, you know, there's definitely been feedback from people. Like Basha will give me feedback from time to time, particularly when I worked at the club. There's always other people's opinions about how you should go about your job. And yeah, to be honest, it's mostly from our community. I mean, it's either like a racist or sexist attack from a random bot, probably, or it's someone I know from the community saying,
Yeah.
I don't like that you did that, or you shouldn't be doing that, or you should wear something different. But by and large, like I said, I feel pretty lucky. But maybe if my name gets more prominent, that might change.
Yeah.
No, I reckon it would too.
It does.
The
It does
community is
happen.
sometimes very brutal.
Yeah.
Very brutal. Well, I do want to understand. You've worked in the AFL, right? And I've always had this question in mind because I've always thought that the AFL, all these white-dominated places would not promote Islam, right? And AFL brought in multicultural round, and they promoted Bashar Huli Islam quite a bit. Now, my theory is it's just to attract Muslim viewers to make more money. I generally don't think there was anything genuine behind that.
Yeah.
What would your thoughts be on that?
100%.
It's commercial.
I mean, everything's commercial, right?
Yeah.
It's not. And why would they? Like, what's in it for them to promote? I mean, I'd like to think that they genuinely care about making the world a better place, but they're not going to platform one religion over another because of that. That's, you know, Basha's kind of was a rare player who made it big, who did play very well, who ended up winning 3 premierships. So, of course, who had his own purpose and mission as well. So that was a beautiful kind of partnership for them. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that from our point of view. Like, I think we sometimes can be really naive, and I certainly was, that people want to do things out of the goodness of their heart. Some people do. Those people generally don't have any money to do it with. So when we want to get savvy and get stuff done, and we need money or platform or support, you know, you're going to those bigger brands and names. They're, of course, going to ask what's in it for them. I was hired at the Richmond Footy Club, like I said, as a fan engagement and marketing officer. My job really was to attract Indian supporters. I was Indian, that's why they hired me. I somehow, nailed the interview. But I had no experience in any of that. But they needed someone who could actually provide insights into how do we attract different communities. And so that's where that started. And it's no surprise that in sport, diversity and inclusion, fan engagement, that all sits in the comms side of the business. Now, that tells you everything about where the intent is from that organisation, that it is a commercial conversation. It is about reputation and brand. And again, that's not a bad thing. We just have to be aware of that. And I think what Bash has been able to do really well, and Ali Fahu has been able to do really well with his foundation, is go, okay, that's what they need. They need diversity. They need to attract different a new supporter base. Great, we can solve that problem for you, and we're going to actually help our community by partnering with you, and we're going to provide services. Like, I think that's a beautiful kind of marrying of higher purpose and commercial.
You mentioned traveling to Turkey and seeing that part of the world. I'm always fascinated by the fact that, for example, the UK is like Australia's older brother, right? So, and you look at their sporting scene, for example, very, very different to Australia, right?
It's amazing.
You look at how much more diversity, in genuine inclusion.
Yeah.
Is that simply a matter of they've been there for longer and therefore they're more entrenched, or are they inherently less racist or more open to collaboration and more whatever? Because you mentioned the word colonization before. Well, that's where it all started. They're the gurus in that area. So if they've been able to come around to it, why are we such a laggard?
This is where I pitch to you to fund a study tour for me so I can research it and give you a proper answer, because I think about this all the time, and one day I'll actually do it. I think it's a really good comparison, and I would like America's the other one. They are, and even outside of sport, and when I was in Turkey, I got to meet with some really incredible community leaders from the UK who have developed some really interesting frameworks and ways to work with non-Muslim communities. Like, they've come up with Muslim employment accreditation and how you upskill and also enhance buildings, even so that if there's a building where Muslims are working, there is wudu facilities and anti-Islamophobia campaigns and all the rest of it. Like, it's far more sophisticated than we have been. The difference I've seen, having said that though, a lot of the initiatives that they have are stuff that I've seen happen here and people have tried to get up. So it's not that the thinking isn't there. I think it's the sustainability. And their community is just so much further ahead. Like, they are just decades ahead of us. So there is that. Numbers is also a really different thing. We're like, 3% of the population here. I don't know what percent, but it's far more over there. But I will say it's not, but the Islamophobia they face over there is horrific. Like, it's actually very, very significant compared to what we see here. And so that comes with being there for a lot longer as well. They have a very different migrant population there too. So they have all the different kind of generations of migrants. And then if you look at sport in particular, there's still significant racism at there. Like, similarly to us, it's sort of baked into their class system as well. So I don't know that they're better than us. I just think their communities are way more organised and sustained around their initiatives to combat that. But I'm dying to get over there and work it out.
One thing I found amazing, I brought this up on another podcast, and that was we went to London and we went to an Arsenal game at the Emirates, and there was no alcohol while the game's on. And I found that to be absolutely amazing. So the only way you could drink alcohol is there's designated spots and you can't bring it into the main stadium. And I just feel like if Australia adopts that, sporting here would go another level. Because every time we go to the AFL, there's beer being dropped on me. There's a douchebag right next to me having like 16 cups. By the end of it, he lost 3 teeth. Like, it's an absolute joke going to the footy, and it's getting worse by the year, right? And I think that honestly the AFL need to do a bit more to make it more friendly for your families, because there's so much alcohol.
I feel like the crowds, I find when I go to the footy, I'm really impressed by how, like, fans from opposition teams can sit together. It does feel, I will say night games in particular are really full on, like the swearing alone. It's not family friendly at all.
You're an MCC member by any chance? You're not one of those...
No.
You know, the poshy people sitting in the poshy stands over there. You're one of the people, right?
I
the
am.
seats that Ali and I get, the regular kind of...
You're right, though. I used to sit up on level 2.
That's not counted.
That's what I mean. Right?
That's not counted.
but
We've sat in the corporate box is very, very savoury. Everything's above board. The MCC stands, whenever we sit over there, it's very, very nice. I'm talking about in the Bay 13 kind of area.
Yeah. It is dicey, and I had to move. So we used to sit on level 2 in reserve seats, and now our seats are in the Shane Warne stand because that's where the prayer room is.
Yeah.
So we just want to be able to get to the prayer room and back as quickly as possible. So now we're like in the thick of it, and it's full on. But I guess my impression of like the EPL is that it is so like hyper masculine crowds that are very you can't sit with opposition teams.
Honestly, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I found more peace in an EPL game than
Yeah,
in a normal
wow.
AFL game. There was no one swearing,
Yeah.
no one taunting anyone. I was of the impression that every EPL game, a couple of stabbings, right? I saw nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah,
Nothing. The
wow.
game finished, everyone left peacefully. Usually like once an AFL game's done and you're out there walking with the billions of people, there are just young idiots just causing havoc,
Yeah.
shouting, mucking around the police, just being idiots. I did not see it. Maybe if it's like a what are they called?
Derby.
Derby. Maybe it's different.
Yeah.
But in a normal game, I was like, this is actually amazing. No drunks, no idiots.
Oh, that's amazing.
I was like, wow.
And
Wow.
we were seated around us. You could see so many fathers and sons.
Yeah.
You could see couples, families, children, young kids. And I was like, everyone is amazingly well behaved.
Yeah.
There are no shenanigans. I was like, this is pretty safe.
I will say, like, going to the football here and the cricket to a certain degree, as a woman, is very intimidating. Like, it just it does not feel safe at all. And women for a long time have been saying that the stands need to feel safer. I don't know, I'm feeling a bit protective of Australian sport right now.
You're being a bit biased here.
I know.
What's going on here?
No, I feel like you're right though. If Australian sport was a little bit more family friendly, often I'm saying to sporting codes that if you don't have to go after a diversity strategy or a diversity and inclusion strategy, why don't you look at a kids and family strategy? Like, make it suitable for families and kids, and then you actually, like, that's a multicultural strategy in and of itself. So that's how we roll. We'll come to things that are family friendly. And I think that, sport could absolutely, especially AFL, there's a lot of work to do there. I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
Yeah, Australian sport has a long way to go. Honestly.
Oh, I was going to say, you asked about like why the UK kind of so ahead. I think a part of it is like we are still in those early stages of grappling with our own diversity. Like it's still a thing that we don't see ourselves as a diverse country and a multicultural country. We see ourselves as the norm. You know, the blank canvas is a white male and everybody else is kind of an other community. And so in sport, as soon as you start to say, well, what about we do things a little bit differently? Like there's such a defensive, like even I got defensive.
Yeah.
You know, there's
You're
such
one
a
of them.
one of
Yeah.
them.
What's going on here? Take off the
They've got
mask.
into you.
Hey, I always have to play the other role. I thought, why not today? I get to be defensive. There's such a backlash to anything changing, and I think it is. It's just that we're in that kind of starting push where our voices are getting louder, and people who are holding on are really holding on now. But I don't know, we're also in an election year and it's going to be really interesting politically, and I think sport will follow suit as well. I think we've seen, I recently gave us a keynote to sports CEOs asking them to hold the line on a lot of the good work that they've done and not be swayed by the zeitgeist or the political kind of climate that's coming for them, because government love to use sport to their advantage, and depending on the government of the day.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting how in Australia there's obviously two sides to the debate about migration and all that kind of stuff, right? So you sit on a Qantas plane and the safety video. I took a flight 2 weeks ago, and for the first time in years, I actually watched the safety video. That's not very.
He's usually on the iPad.
I'm
straight
on the
away.
iPad.
As
I'm
soon as he
watching
sits down iPad,
We travel
sleeping.
so much for work. We are immune to the notion of traveling. That's just
course.
second nature. So I sat and watched this, and they've got an Indian guy in there. They've got an Asian guy in there. They're trying to every culture is represented. I was like, this is a great marketing ploy because you're sucking people in with this notion of we are open and welcoming to every culture and community until you land
Until
here.
you land, yeah.
Then once you land here,
The border
good
control,
luck-
your brown
border
get there.
control. Somehow you are randomly bag test, random security test. You're like very random, and then you try getting a job and try getting into school and then you realize, oh well, there are certain suburbs that are not for me. I won't fit in. There are certain suburbs that are Asian suburbs and Muslim suburbs and whatever suburbs. You quickly begin to realize, yes, it's open to all nations, but you stay in your lane, you stay in your silo. We've boxed you in over here.
Totally.
And it's so sad like that because we have immense potential. Like this place could be phenomenally good.
I think where, you asked me how it feels and what it's like in the stands, I think where it's most palpable for me, but probably because this is my experience, is within the organisations themselves, Exactly what you just said. Like you are siloed, you are seen as, okay, you're a community, type person, so you can only take on community roles, community engagement. You're not going to be a leader. Like, we'll never rise to CEO. People won't see us as representative of everybody. We'll always be niche. And you'll never quite fit in and be made to feel like you also have ownership of this industry or the organisation. And I think those barriers are really real, and just that's kind of the thing that drives me because and we talked about before, like, what on earth am I doing in these places? It's kind of to say, hey, we can also be here, but things need to change. Like, they're not easy spaces to stand up in. But that's where I see it the most, and it's the really kind of insidious under the carpet. You get sidelined very quickly. You really have to be bold and know what you're doing to get anywhere. And you face a lot of casual racism. So it's kind of thick-skinned stuff, but I feel like the more we can fix that and get more people who are different in those roles, that will start to shift.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for you?
Well, studies who are funded by
She came with an agenda. You'll keep on pitching it.
It's recorded as well.
No, it's been a year now since I started my own consultancy working for myself. So just pushing ahead with that, working with leaders, developing leaders to be more inclusive leaders. So the kind of leaders that when there are global crises, when their journalists speak up on an issue, they know how to handle it rather than have knee-jerk, really unhealthy responses. So that's really what I'll be working on. And then, spinning the thought leadership's plate, which is a lot of speaking and writing.
No, it's going to be good. Was there any last questions for her?
No, it's just, obviously we've spoken a lot about what the challenges are and the problems are. You work within the system and all that kind of stuff. What's a message that you have for the Muslim community itself? I'm keen to get that perspective because we do see, for example, that there are Muslims who also shy away from being visibly Muslim, right? You have Muslims in politics who say, look, I'm not going to use my Muslim name. They'll change their name, they'll change their look, they'll change everything to say, look, you know what, in order for me to get this gig, I need to be as assimilated, as normal as possible. And that might work for them as an individual, but it then, number one, does not give them a platform to be able to, drive any further conversation about their topic because they've already buried the identity, left it at the door when they walk into the office. So what's your, because it's a lot of what you stand for is the fact that I'm going to be a loud, proud, visible Muslim. Yes, that makes me a target, but at the same time, it creates a forum. My existence creates a forum for conversation.
Yeah, and I often say that there are times where I think, oh God, should I be less Muslim? I don't really know how you do that either, to be honest. Like, I'm not taking my hijab off. So often I'm not even projecting that out, like the hijab does that for me. So no matter what I do, whatever assumptions people are going to make about me are going to be there as soon as I walk in the door. So the thing that I've tried to flip on its head is that very thought that, okay, this is something that I have to manage to actually this is my biggest strength.
Embrace it.
Embrace it. And there are days, Ali, we've talked about being in the media more. I love presenting. I would love to have my own show and host, and there are definitely barriers for me getting those gigs. I'm in those rooms, I'll be auditioning, but it's just, they're not going to put someone like me as the host of a game show or something, So I often can feel down about that. And then I remember, okay, but every knockback for that reason is just ajr for me in the afterlife. So then it's like, oh, great, knock me back as much as you want. But outside of that, I think the thing that I've tried to flip on its head is, okay, my Islam is my biggest strength. And so, what I do, my consultancy is called Good Human. I distill the kind of basic values and behaviours that make us Muslim and make our character great as taught to us by our Prophet, and give that to people, Muslim and non-Muslim, and say this is what it means to have integrity, to be humble, to lead with purpose and vision. These are all practices that come from our deen. Consultants around the world charge thousands and thousands of dollars to teach organisations this stuff, and it's all baked into who we are as Muslims. And so it's taking those strengths and giving that to the world. And that's what I hope other Muslims can do as well. Whatever your field is, take the principles and what's specific about being Muslim and share that. For example, I'll tell people, okay, I need a place to pray. But I won't just say, okay, I need a place to pray. I'll also say, because this is why we pray and this is what I get out of it by praying, 5 times a day. I get a moment of mindfulness. I get a moment of peace. And every section of my day has that baked into it. And it's a really great practice. And so I'm just putting strengths-based approach to being a Muslim in the world. Because really all that anyone ever hears is the things we can't do, how hard it is. They turn on the news and see that Muslims' lives are really hard. And I turn up and say, I love being a Muslim. It's actually really great. And it's part of why I feel so successful and why I put my head on the pillow at night and feel comfortable with where I'm at. And you'll be amazed how much people gravitate towards that.
Yeah. Great message.
Great last. That's a great way to end the podcast. Strong message. Look, Rana, thank you so much for your insights, for your honesty. Really do appreciate it. And what did you want from Hijaz again?
Study tour.
Study tour.
You
could go to Maza for that.
Sport and diversity.
He loves traveling. You guys might want to travel together on that one. He loves to study as well. Hey, look, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your time. And I like your dress, yellow.
Oh,
you blended
and
nicely.
I'm very Richmond today.
Yeah, I'm a Richmond supporter. So,
are you? Okay.
And I think that's why we connected.
Yeah.
Maybe
right. I don't have any freebies for you. I'm sorry.
But look, we wish you the best in everything that you do. Stay safe out there.
Yeah, thank you.
And keep doing what you're doing. But if you guys enjoyed the podcast, give us a like, subscribe, means the world to us. Give us a comment as well. And until then, see you guys in the next one.